Logan's Run wasn't just retro sci-fi, it was a countdown wearing the mask of a blockbuster, a future built on beauty, obedience, and the rule that no one lives past 30. But behind the glowing domes, the production was staring down its own last day. MGM hid how close the film came to breaking them. Michael York joined the cast because one stranger nudged him toward destiny, and Carousel flew on a rig so risky the crew had to rethink it mid-air. These are 15 weird facts about Logan's Run, where the clock hit zero and the legend refused to expire. Number 1. MGM bought Logan's Run in 1969 and hired George Powell and Bond writer Richard Maybaum, but right away the script ran into problems. The studio wanted a big commercial thriller. The writers wanted political commentary. No one agreed on tone, scale, or even what the story should say. Then the project stalled again when American International Pictures tried to buy it. MGM asked for more money than AIP would pay, and the deal collapsed. With no script everyone supported and no producer willing to push it forward, the movie was shelved while sci-fi trends moved on without it. Everything changed after Westworld hit in 1973. MGM realized audiences were hungry for dystopian stories again, so the studio revived Logan's Run with a fresh team and a simpler direction. What started as a prestige adaptation became a long, quiet fight just to stay alive until the decade finally caught up to it. Number 2. When MGM talked about Logan's Run in 1976, they proudly called it a $6 million production. Inside the studio, everyone knew the truth was closer to 9. Effects problems, rewrites, and costly Texas locations kept pushing the budget higher, and MGM was already in a fragile financial state. Revealing the real number risked scaring investors who were worried about the studio's shrinking profits, so MGM downplayed everything. Press releases quoted the lower figure, executives stayed quiet, and the studio treated the budget like a secret that could decide their future. If the movie failed, it wouldn't just hurt the bottom line, it could have pushed MGM deeper into crisis. Logan's Run eventually hit big enough to steady the ship, but behind the polished domes and glowing carousels was a production that came dangerously close to sinking the studio. Number 3. When Logan's Run made the jump from page to screen, almost everything shifted. The 1967 novel set the cutoff age at 21, sent its characters across a sprawling future world, and built its climax around a political uprising. But MGM couldn't afford any of that. With a limited budget and mid-70s effects, the studio needed something simpler, cheaper, and easier to film. So they rebuilt the story from the ground up. The age limit jumped to 30 to fit older actors. The plot stayed on Earth instead of ranging across cities and colonies, and the movie introduced its most iconic invention, Carousel, a ritual that didn't exist anywhere in the book. Even Logan's transformation changed. On the page, he's far colder, more controlled. On screen, he becomes a reluctant hero audiences could follow. In the end, the film barely resembles its source, but those changes are the reason it endures. The version people remember is the one shaped by necessity, not the one the authors originally wrote. Number 4. Logan's Run didn't only evolve during filming, the real transformation happened in the editing room. MGM spent nearly 8 months cutting, trimming, and testing the movie, all in pursuit of a PG rating they believed would make or break its box office. Entire scenes vanished. A longer Francis Runner hunt was removed. Extended material inside the New U clinic disappeared. Moments that fleshed out character motivations were clipped for pacing, leaving some early emotional beats feeling lighter than the script intended. A few pieces survived on home releases, but other reels are believed to be gone for good. By the time it reached theaters, Logan's Run was shaped less by the original assembly and more by the test audiences who reacted to it one cut at a time. Number 5. When MGM released Logan's Run in 1976, audiences thought they were getting a stylish sci-fi adventure. What they didn't realize was that the movie was also making audio history. It became the very first film ever released in Dolby stereo on 70mm, turning a studio gamble into Dolby's test case for big format theatrical sound. The system offered cleaner highs, smoother separation, and far less background noise than anything moviegoers were used to. What it didn't have yet were the deep baby boom bass channels that Star Wars and Close Encounters would introduce a year later. So the mix felt immersive and modern, but not yet earth-shaking. Jerry Goldsmith's score benefited the most. For many viewers, this was the first time an electronic orchestral blend sounded crisp and wide in a theater. The movie didn't blow the walls off, but it showed what Dolby's process could do, and that quiet breakthrough helped set the stage for the blockbuster sound revolution that followed. Number 6. By the time Logan's Run reached the design phase, MGM's budget was already stretched thin. The studio wanted a futuristic world full of glowing consoles and sleek computer systems, but custom building all that hardware would have pushed the film into financial freefall. So the crew went hunting, not for inspiration, but for leftovers. Deep in MGM's warehouse sat crates of props from Westworld 1973. Control panels, blinking modules, plastic tubing, and entire racks of unused electronic set pieces. They'd been gathering dust for years. Instead of starting from scratch, the art department repainted the pieces, rearranged the panels, and rewired just enough lights to make them look new. Those computer brains you see in Cathedral, much of Sanctuary's inner machinery, even the monitors behind the dome technicians, all vintage Westworld tech disguised under fresh paint and colored gels. The trick worked because 1970s sci-fi shared a common visual language: chrome edges, modular shapes, blinking lights. Most viewers had no idea two completely different dystopias were running on the same equipment. It wasn't scavenging for scraps, it was survival. And in the end, Logan's Run wound up linked to Westworld not through story or theme, but through the same physical machinery that kept both futures alive on screen. Hey, crazy how two completely different futures ended up sharing the same hardware, right? If this world of domes, deadlines, and hidden tech pulls you in, you can bring Logan's Run home. Just check the links below for the Blu-ray or DVD. Thanks for the support, it really means a lot. Now, let's step back into the countdown. Number 7. On the very first day of shooting, director Michael Anderson took one look at Logan's opening outfit and decided it felt too stiff. He wanted something that showed who Logan was when he wasn't acting as a Sandman. Something simple, casual, and a little mysterious. And he wanted it that day. Costume designer Bill Thomas had no prep time, no sketches, and no backup plan. He grabbed fabric, started cutting, and built the black robe on the spot while the lights were still being set. The result was the look Michael York ended up loving, a design created in a rush that immediately felt right for the character. York kept the robe for almost 40 years, storing it with his personal Logan's Run memorabilia. When he finally auctioned it in 2014, fans were stunned to learn the truth. One of the film's most iconic pieces of wardrobe was born from a last-minute scramble that lasted barely 2 hours. Number 8. Michael York wasn't convinced Logan's Run was meant for him. The script felt unusual, the tone felt uncertain, and he'd already been offered several futuristic roles he'd turned down. He was ready to pass again, until a small moment changed everything. While leaving a theater, a young staffer driving him back to his hotel recognized him, lit up, and immediately asked if he'd seen the Logan's Run script. Before York could answer, the kid pointed at him and said with absolute certainty, "You have to play Logan. That role is yours." It wasn't industry advice or a studio pitch. It was raw conviction from someone who loved sci-fi and somehow saw York already inside the character. The comment stuck with him the entire night. By morning, York reversed course and accepted the part. That decision set off another quiet change. He recommended Farrah Fawcett for a supporting role after meeting her during casting discussions. For Fawcett, it was a chance to step beyond commercials and modeling and show she could hold her own in a major studio film. The exposure helped accelerate the momentum that would soon turn her into one of the most recognizable faces of the 1970s. York gained a career-defining role. Fawcett gained a launch pad, and it all began with one stranger who refused to let him walk away. Number 9. The early drafts of Logan's Run didn't have a romance at all. Logan and Jessica were written as uneasy partners, two people thrown together by circumstance, not emotion. Their bond was meant to grow out of survival and distrust, not chemistry. But MGM had a different idea. Executives believed a sci-fi movie without a love story would feel cold to audiences, and they pressured writer David Zala Goodman to change the relationship mid-production. Suddenly, the pages began filling with softer moments, lingering glances, and dialogue that hadn't existed a week earlier. Goodman later admitted he was writing emotional beats on the fly, trying to satisfy the studio while keeping the story coherent. Michael York and Jenny Agutter both noticed the shift. They joked that their characters seemed to fall for each other simply because the studio needed a romance to help sell posters and trailers. The actors leaned into it as best they could, but even they admitted the change felt abrupt, a marketing decision more than an organic arc. That small mandate subtly reshaped the entire tone of the movie. What started as a stark chase through a collapsing society softened into a more conventional Hollywood adventure, complete with a love story that hadn't existed until the studio demanded it. It wasn't written for the world of the film, it was written for the world outside the theater. Number 10. Most studio films in the mid-1970s tiptoed around queer characters, treated them as punchlines, or avoided the subject entirely. But Logan's Run took a different path, and did it without fanfare, lectures, or wink-wink jokes. In the circuit scene, when Logan scrolls through potential partners, the very first person who appears is a man. There's no shock, no comedic pause. Logan simply says no, and keeps moving. A moment later, when Jessica steps through, Logan casually asks if she prefers women.
Oh, Do you prefer women?
The line isn't played for laughs. It isn't coded. It's just part of how people talk in this future. Open, relaxed, unbothered. What makes this so striking is how quietly the film does it. There's no speech about tolerance. No attempt to frame the moment as progressive. The movie simply shows a world where sexuality is fluid, accepted, and woven into everyday life. For 1976 MGM, a major studio still cautious about anything remotely controversial, this approach was unusually bold. And because the film doesn't announce it, the moment feels even more natural. It treats queerness not as a plot device, but as one small detail in a future where judgment has finally burned away. Number 11. By the time Peter Ustinov joined the production, most of Logan's run was already in the can. The old man was supposed to be a small, quiet role, but the moment Ustinov stepped onto the overgrown Senate set, the character changed completely. He didn't stick to the script. He wandered. He mused. He drifted into gentle stories about age, memory, and, more than anything, cats. None of it was written, but every take felt alive. The cats circling him weren't trained performers. They were real strays allowed to live on the set, and Ustinov treated them like co-stars. In between takes, he doodled cat cartoons with titles like Cat-tastrophe and Cat-atonic, pinning them around the set just to make the crew laugh. Michael York and Jenny Agutter later said filming the finale felt less like shooting a scene and more like watching Ustinov put on a one-man show. The crew would stop moving, go quiet, and simply listen as he spun another improvised monologue. His presence didn't just complete the movie, it softened it. In a story built on fear, control, and dying young, Ustinov brought warmth, humor, and a sense of life continuing beyond the system. The emotional tone of the finale isn't in the script. It's in everything Peter Ustinov added the moment he opened his mouth. Number 12. Carousel looks graceful on screen, but the stunt behind it pushed the crew into dangerous territory. The first version of the rig used a single winch to lift multiple performers at once. During tests, the cables twisted together in mid-air, leaving stunt actors spinning, tangled, and stuck until lifts could bring them down one at a time. Production shut the whole sequence down. Engineers rebuilt the setup so every performer had an individual winch tied into a master control system. A single panic switch could stop the entire mechanism instantly. To finish the effect safely, the team filmed the set upside down. Performers were lowered toward a glowing light fixture on the floor, and the footage was flipped to make it look like they were rising toward the crystal. The final scene feels otherworldly, but getting there meant turning a malfunctioning stunt rig into something the crew could trust. Number 13. During the final crowd scene, one Dallas extra decided to have a little fun and flashed a quick Vulcan salute, fully expecting MGM to catch it and cut him out. But the editors were racing deadlines, scanning wide shots, and focused on the leads. Nobody noticed. The salute slipped into the final cut and stayed there for decades. Fans eventually freeze-framed the moment online and sparked debates until the actor himself confirmed it was just a playful attempt to stand out. The cameo survived for one reason. No one was checking background faces during the hectic final edit. A tiny sci-fi crossover that wasn't planned, wasn't approved, and wasn't even remembered until the internet dug it back up. Number 14. When Marvel picked up Logan's run in 1977, the studio treated it like a world ready to explode. The comic adapted the film, pushed deeper into the society behind it, and featured energetic artwork, including a standout issue drawn by a young George Perez. Readers responded well, but Marvel's licensing limits and shifting priorities cut the series short. After only 7 issues, the run ended just as it was starting to find its identity. Later revivals in 1990 and 2010 tried new angles, some closer to the novel, some more modern, but none lasted long enough to leave a mark. What did survive was Perez's brief involvement. Those early issues, once overlooked on comic racks, are now prized by collectors, a small, bright spark in Marvel's history that vanished almost as quickly as it arrived. Number 15. When CBS ordered a Logan's Run TV series in 1977, the studio imagined a long-running sci-fi adventure that could ride the wave of the movie's success. But the project collapsed almost from the moment cameras rolled, not because audiences rejected it, but because the production couldn't hold itself together. Money was tight, so every script went through cuts, rewrites, and compromises before filming even began. Sets were repurposed, effects were simplified, and ambitious storylines were trimmed down to fit a shrinking budget. Writers pushed back hard. David Gerrold protested so strongly against changes to his script that he removed his name entirely, crediting it to no award, a quiet jab at how far the episode had drifted from what he wrote. Behind the scenes, things kept unraveling. Producer Saul David was fired halfway through the season, leaving the series without a steady hand, just as directors, writers, and cast members were trying to figure out what kind of show they were even making. Each week felt like a reset. Different tone, different priorities, different creative voices all pulling in different directions. The results showed on screen. Episodes bounced between thoughtful sci-fi, campy chase scenes, and recycled sets dressed up to look futuristic. Fans who loved the movie noticed the drop in quality immediately. immediately, and ratings sank fast. After just 14 episodes, CBS pulled the plug. A franchise that once promised a bold new future ended up undone by confusion, budget strain, and a room full of creators who were never allowed to make the same show twice. Logan's run was never a smooth production. It was rewrites, broken models, melting sets, and a crew trying to build the future with tools barely meant for the present. Everything wobbled, everything went wrong, and somehow, the film still carved out a place that refuses to fade. Because beneath the blinking crystals and the domed illusions was a story that hit deeper than its budget ever could. A story about waking up, questioning the world you were born into, and stepping into a truth that might burn you alive, but might also set you free. If you grew up with it, you remember that moment. Logan stepping into real sunlight, squinting, breathing, alive for the first time. And if you've just discovered it now, you can feel it. Those questions the film asked in 1976, they're the same ones we're still asking today. So drop a comment and tell us which film you want us to run toward next, because some movies don't just imagine the future, they survive it.